Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Elliot Baker, and I am joined today in the Hoxhunt Ciso Sandbox by Lisa Kubicki from DocuSign. How are you doing today, Lisa?
Great. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I wanted to lead in here by giving everybody a little bit of a background to you, Lisa, because we had the opportunity to speak a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was one of the most fascinating conversations I've had with an information security leader. And a big reason for that is that I've never met an information security leader like yourself. You have a really interesting, totally non-traditional background, getting into not just cybersecurity, but also into technology. And I don't want to spoil it. So for those of you who haven't met Lisa, I want to make sure that she has the chance to tell you where she came from. But not only is where she's from so interesting, it's interesting because where she's from also had within that context a really interesting approach to training that worked really well out of context into cybersecurity. And that's where this conversation is going. We're going to be talking about psychology, the behavioral psychology principles behind really effective training. And in this case, really effective cybersecurity training. But before we go into all that, Lisa, please tell us about your story. Please introduce yourself and how you got to DocuSign and to cybersecurity.
Sure. Great. I've been at DocuSign for about 4.5 years. That was after 20 years in higher education. I worked at the likes of Stanford University and Cornell University on the East Coast of North America, primarily with students, but then also with staff and with faculty. It was about leadership development and it was about change management. And that change management was based on behavior change that needed to happen, particularly when I was at Stanford. We needed a performance management program that wasn't existing. And I was charged with, you need to not only get people on board with a new tool and a new timeline and a new expectation of the ratings, but help them understand why they would want to do this and not be afraid of it and embrace those hard and those easy, but those hard feedback conversations and actually seek them out and want to have them. And none of that could be done without consideration of the psychology of people and how to help them get past their fear, how to help them embrace something that they weren't particularly interested in. There wasn't particularly this exciting pull to get engaged with. And I had a baby and moved and then was looking for work. And this opportunity, somebody put in front of my face and said, you should totally do this. And I said, what? I've never worked for I've only been in nonprofits, education. Well, what is this tech thing? What is SaaS? I don't know what any of that language is. I don't know what that means. What is stock? What? No, but I went for it. And it was a bit of a steep learning curve. But it was also then people are still people, no matter where they work. And so all of the things that I knew and that I knew about how to effectively deliver information in training situations, in awareness building, and get people on board with something and try and turn something that's, or scary into, this isn't so icky. Maybe they don't all love it. Maybe they're not all excited about it, but get people on board with thinking in a different way and embracing something that perhaps wasn't something they were fully aware of and knew they should be a part of.
People are people, exactly. And what your story resonates with me. I went into tech also from a different kind of background. For me, it was journalism. Your background's much more interesting than mine, so we'll focus on you. But I think it also speaks really highly of DocuSign to take an out-of-the-box approach the way they did with you, and looking at approaching this topic of awareness in a different way with a different kind of attitude towards a solution. And so with that solution, you bring a really fascinating approach that's based on principles of behavioral psychology. And I don't want to get this wrong, but I think I recall it being grouped into the obstacles that your brain is kind of wired with that prevent you from learning. And you call those bad brain
Yeah.
And then, okay, which, I got a pretty bad brain myself, and I'm trying to learn pretty much anything new these days. And then we have the different wiring that you can kind of, or maybe not wiring, but the way that you can hack through that wiring, called feed the brain behavioral
Right.
science. So I think given the time we have, we'll probably focus on the actual science itself on the feed the brain side, but we'll maybe summarize the bad brain. Before we do that, just to remind the audience that this is a Q&A, so please do ask questions. Lisa is just a wonderful person to have answer those questions. So please do not be afraid to raise your hand and ask a question in the Q&A section here. And yeah, Lisa, take it away. So tell us what the
Well, I
bad brain
do
is.
want to give the caveat. I am not a behavioral psychologist, so I am doing my best and sharing what I have learned and what has worked. But please don't ask me to deep dive into somebody's research. The bottom line is that based on all the research, what we need to have to really change people's behavior and get them on board is short bursts of engaging, fun, sticky, memorable content that makes them feel good when they observe it or engage with it. And those feel good moments are the things that are feeding the brain. And it's not about making security feel good. It's about the way in which you're doing it so that the brain feels rewarded and you keep hitting it with more opportunities to feel reward. So that those hormones and the neurotransmitters that you want in the brain, so people keep coming back for more, or their brain is eager to do it again and again, happens again and again. So bad brain elements, we lose everything. Our short-term memory, new information, 70% is gone in one day, 90% in 30 days. So if it's not reinforced, if you don't hit somebody again with that same content, it's gone after they've seen it. So those once a year kind of training, that one hit opportunity, it's just not going to do it. Our attention span, the short-term memory can only hold 5 to 9. And again, if it's not reinforced, it never moves from short-term memory to long-term memory, and you don't hold on to it. If you don't use it, you lose it. And that is happening constantly. And so things that you want to do are reinforce and reward. You want to have it often. You want to have it often enough that people move to a level of unconscious competence, so that it's like putting on your pants. You don't even have to think about it. It's just inherent. I've seen it so much. I know how quickly I can easily report this email. I don't even think about it. It doesn't disrupt my flow of my work. I don't have to pause, switch my brain, remember what I'm supposed to do, and then do it. I just click a button and go, because it's that ingrained in what I've done. It's been reinforced in that way. When you reward employees, and not all rewards hit the same for all people, but rewards that the brain likes is instant way to go, instant positive reinforcement. And for some people, that's points and seeing where they are on the leaderboard. For some people, it's the gamified way in which they can engage and keep up, and the contests that they're either having with themselves. You think about the Peloton leaderboard when people are on their bikes. People want to move up when you're looking at it. They want to get higher. Same thing happens with training opportunities. And so not all training needs to just be training. You need to think about, how can we deliver awareness in a way that doesn't feel like training, doesn't just read something to me and put me to sleep. And BJ Fogg talks about his behavior model. You need to make things easy, and you need to give prompts to do it. So the only way for that behavior change is not to try and change their motivation, because that's nearly impossible. Make it easy, prompt them to do it over and over and over again, so that people will keep doing that. And finally, I'll just say that Osterman, which is a research group outside of Seattle here, they have found that 15 minutes is the tipping point per month of training. And again, training can come in a lot of different ways. It's not always that on-demand computer-based experience. 15 minutes a month of training is the tipping point to get people to feel like, I am an investment into the security culture of my org. That's something that I contribute to and want to continue to deliver on. So that's that tipping point of how much time should people be spending. And it's 15 minutes a month, not all at once. It can be short little hits over time, but reinforcing in different ways You want those micro training, those micro awareness opportunities that people don't even realize they've just read something. You got them. They just answered a question. You got them. They just reported a fish drill. You got them. If you're doing enough of that, you're reinforcing some of the same things. And that's what the brain wants. That's how you're going to feed it those good jujus that it wants more of.
Now that there is a fantastic answer. You pretty much got everything into one really beautifully worded response there. So I encourage everybody to write that down, take notes, and respond on that. And I think what a lot of people, so let's chunk that out a little bit. And we're looking at some of these different aspects to a training program that's going to incorporate all that psychology and all that science. So I do want to remind everybody, Ciso Sandbox is, while it's typically a vendor neutral podcast, DocuSign does use Hoxhunt, and Lisa chose Hoxhunt, I think, from many different options based on the fact that Hoxhunt fit into her idea of how things should be done. If I understand that,
yes, there's
right.
Probably three primary reasons. One was the emphasis on the positive. It wasn't only people who clicked that got any reinforcement or training or follow-up, so that it wasn't the negative reinforcement. It was, hey, you did the right thing. You reported this. Instantly, you're getting points. You're getting badges and shields. There's achievements. You're seeing yourself on the leaderboard, and things are quickly reinforced. This is what you spotted. This is what was weird about this email that should have raised the red flag. Second was the frequency. Most of the phishing programs are at most once a month. And when I was having to do it myself and manage my own fish drills, it was once a month because that was all I could handle. I had to build my templates. I had to get new templates based on in the wild and what we were seeing and what we were allowing, and try and mix it up so that not everybody was getting the same one. This is happening 3 times a month. So those short hits, really somebody could report and be done in 5 seconds. But those that are going to report and look and see and notice their leaderboard, 2 to 3 minutes, I'm getting that 3 times a month. And then finally, it was the construct that it was increasing the challenge based on how each person was doing. So Elliot clicks on nothing. He's going to steadily get harder and harder actual fish templates that are drilling him to practice. And so you're increasing Elliot's practice. I click on everything. I can't resist. I just click on everything. So I'm going to stay pretty steady until I really get it. Lisa, notice the things that we put in there that are so painfully obvious you should notice. And only once my practice is really proving that I'm learning something, will it increase. And the AI that you guys have developed is now kicked in for us, so that people are starting to get those very custom, very tailored org, to their region, and to their level of readiness for harder and harder templates to spot.
Right.
There is a fourth thing, and the simplicity. It needs to be absolutely simple. And we started in Outlook, and we're with Hoxhunt, moved to Gmail, and it's one button. It's not something people have to think about at all. Once I introduce them to it, they just need, oh, there it is. Push a button.
Yeah. Hey, the button. And that's something that if I remember, one of the principles of behavioral science that you brought up was Skinner's operant learning theory.
Yeah.
And I think that, I'm not sure how many solutions you looked at, but typically the word on security training is that it's failure obsessed. It's failure based. Yeah. It's going to really only give you any kind of feedback when you fail. Hoxhunt's just fundamentally based on success. It's fundamentally based on the button. So there's 2 things there that maybe you could talk about, jump off from there, about rewarding success as opposed to focusing on failure, and about having a button, again, simple to use, obvious, those kind of things, and how that goes into your philosophy.
Is all about BJ Fogg's model. B equals map, or BMAP as he calls it. The behavior equals motivation times ability times prompt. And ability is really about ease. It's not a test of somebody's actual ability to do something. It's about how easy is it to do it. And the button creates that ease. I don't have to search for it. I don't have to think about it. It's always visible to me right there on my desktop or at the bottom of the email on the phone. It's easy for me to click and go. In terms of the positive reinforcement, that is about that law of cause and effect, that the brain is going to want to keep doing things that make it feel good. And it's going to want to stay away from the things that don't feel good. And so if I feel like, oh, dang it, I clicked that thing and now I'm getting punished by having to go through some learning, the brain doesn't want to do that again. Now, in some ways, that does change behavior as well. That negative reinforcement will want me to avoid it. But we would rather the brain be eager to see this again by correctly reporting. And so it's that consequences of the action, whether the brain is going to want to do it again and again and again.
Right. And what are people saying to you? Do they seem to be responding in a way that they do learn, that they are actually staying engaged?
Yes. And, it's funny. I've had some people reach out to me because they've gone on vacation and come back and say, oh no, Lisa, my streak died. Can you get me my streak back? I'm sorry, you're going to have to start from zero again. Or that I fell off the leaderboard because I was out and the drills happened while I was gone, and what have you. So there's people that are eager. They're hungry for that kind of engagement and participation. There's some people who don't care. They never look at that stuff. They don't know what their shield is at the moment, and that's not motivating them. But there's people that have made it clear to me, this is so easy. What we used to have was employees had to figure out, is this malicious or is it not? I don't know. Why should I, sitting in sales, worrying about closing on deals, be able to figure out if that email is malicious or not? I don't want you to do that. I want you to just, I don't know, hit the button and we'll take a look at it. So trying to, again, put the ease into it so that the employee doesn't have to be able to define it and diagnose it. It's not their job. And I don't want to fill up their brain with that useless information, because that's not the role they have. And that's not going to help them stay engaged. They don't need to know. It just looks weird, so I'm going to report it.
How much of the success of this also is due to you? I mean, you're an information security leader, and you need to get people on board. You need to somehow communicate these results, and you need to communicate the importance of the program. How do you actually take this training program and get whoever it is that's your key stakeholders involved? How do you get them to buy into this?
A large part of it, I can't take credit for. I'm filling the role, but a large part of it was the commitment that DocuSign made 4.5 years ago to having a full-time person for just these activities. It wasn't a tag on to somebody's job. And I think DocuSign also gets a lot of credit for, as you said earlier, thinking outside the box. And while they interviewed other people with security backgrounds for the position, deciding to take a chance on somebody who had zero tech or security experience and knowledge, and instead focus on somebody who could deliver on the human element. And, all the things that Irons and Sands talks about, and all that is coming up and more people are discussing in the awareness, behavior, and culture context for security, is that, of course, it's about people, that they're the ones that make or break the security of an organization. It's not the tools, it's not the resources we have in place. Those are going to help, but it's down to the individual people. And so they took the chance on hiring somebody who had experience with people and how behavior changes and actions and reinforcement can happen with people, not the forcing, not the finger wagging, not the stick. It is the carrot. So I love to take some credit, and sure, I'll take a little bit of credit, but they've enabled me to do that because it's my full-time job to think about this. And so we've developed a very comprehensive program with training that's the compliance-based training that's annual, with risk-based training that's as we need it, that is always customized for the DocuSign experience and environment and what we're doing. We've got this fish drill program that's very rigorous. We've got ambassadors, we've got recognition program, we've got newsletters and news briefs that go out. We have an intranet that's constantly has new articles and information. Today is World Backup Day. So of course I sent something out on Slack to everybody to make them think about those things. So I'm constantly thinking about what is it that's going on personally and, professionally in our calendar and time frame that we should be thinking about. Is there some new risk or threat that all employees should just be aware of? Is there something, World Backup Day, of course, I want them to get it off their desktop of their laptops that we give them, their devices, but I also want them to think about their personal phones, their personal pictures and videos and documents. Are you backing those up? So it's always helpful to think about how does it apply to me personally, because I'm a person and not just in my role as an employee. And that, I think that's a bit of the context I'm always trying to put on it, is how do I push this out in a way that's meaningful? We did a whole series with our robust parent and caregiver community that was focused on security for your kids, security for teachers, security for elderly and caregivers, that had nothing to do with them being more secure at work. Although, of course, it's the same behaviors and practices. So if that's something they're teaching their families and engaging their children with, whether they're young learners or older learners, those are good behaviors.
Yeah, that last point you just made, I think, is really interesting, because I've heard someone else talk about cybersecurity in terms of it being almost like a wellness benefit. It's something that you are given at work, but you're taking home and you're passing that on to your family, your loved ones. You're protecting yourself at home from this thing that you get at work. And I think that you just naturally are approaching it that way, from a very humanistic way. And I think that more and more we live online more and more. And so much of our life is spent there. It's good that our employers kind of come in and help us stay safe in that environment.
Yes. And I think it was
Yeah.
George's webinar with you. He talked about how when you just delete a malicious or suspicious email, you're only protecting yourself. But when you report it, you're protecting yourself, your colleagues, your network, your organization, your household, whatever it is. And that's where I think you move up in the security culture maturity model from, I've got individual employees protecting themselves, maybe that's a level 2, to a level 5 of, I need the employees to be a part of the solution for the entire organization. And if they can think globally in that way about their household, about their community, and about our organization, then you increase their engagement. And that's some of that 15 minutes a month, that tipping point that Osterman talked about. You need them to think about it in a way that I personally am part of the security solution. And so I need to be aware of that and be responsible about it.
Yeah. And that's really important. It's really well put. And it's really not very instinctive for a lot of people to think in those terms, that your email behavior actually has this really huge system-wide effect. And it takes education. It takes training. And yeah, you mentioned George Finney, who's a really fascinating person to talk to. In another thing that he wrote also, this is sort of taking a lateral move from what you just said about that, as far as the technical importance of reporting, what that does. I think that you also said this a bit in terms about kind of the reflex, making it an unconscious behavior.
Mm-hmm.
What was is it Martin Broadwell's 4 levels of competence? Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, that you start with, you don't even know what you don't know, that unconscious incompetence. You have no idea that you don't know something, to a conscious incompetence, like, oh gosh, I should know this, but I don't. Level 3 is an unconscious competence where I don't realize that I know it, to finally that conscious competence where, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Conscious competence is level 3. I now know that I'm aware of it, to the unconscious competence where I don't even have to think about it. It is just, it's how I always put my right leg in my pants first. It's how I turn on the sink and know that this way's hot and this way's cold. You know, it's the level of, I don't even have to think about it, but it's ingrained inside of me to know what to do and how to do it.
Right.
And that's been a massive part of the program as well, is again, back to BJ Fogg, of simplifying things. We had so many emails, that addresses that people were supposed to know and memorize and report different things to different email addresses, so that it was convenient for our team. You know, so this went to this place and this went to this place and this went to this place, and that made it convenient for us. But what it did was it made it hard for the employees, because they had to diagnose, they had to figure out, they had to understand who, what team, what subject matter could answer their question or address their issue or their concern. And so we're taking that out. We're simplifying it with that single email address. I don't care what it is, just send it here. We will then get it to the right group and make sure the right team gets to you quickly. Yeah, we've got lots of Slack channels, but there's only one that I push on new hires, and that we have hundreds of people join all the time. It's our help desk security Slack channel internally, so that we are all on that. We can address the question or the concern and get it to the right person, so that the individual employee does not have to have that skill and does not have to feel that they're behind if they don't understand the difference between an incident, a breach, a risk, a threat. No need. They don't need to know. It's also semantics, so they don't need to know.
Yeah. And I never really thought about it until we're talking just now about how a lot of this kind of describes a sense of design thinking, where you're trying to reduce friction as much as possible with a person interacting with the technology, so that the technology becomes useful, that it has the actual effect. And putting that in this educational context is really interesting. Education, before we're going to jump into the questions that are starting to come in, I encourage people to please ask questions. This is your big shot here. But education, so you were in the higher education world at Stanford. I mean, several questions. I guess first off, I've gotten into BJ Fogg since you introduced me to him, really. Did you know him? Did you ever encounter him at Stanford or see him talk there?
I mean, that was an awesome thing about being a part of higher education. The access that you have to various lectures or talks or their new books or things that they're going to do, or how they're participating with the university at some strategic level. So yes, I did get to be introduced to him and see some of his early work on Tiny Habits. And then design thinking, the design school's there, and did go through several of their programs. And that's a huge part of the way my brain works at this point is through that model of expanding and shrinking and trying and redoing, and using design thinking on how are we going to approach this? How do we want to do this?
Yeah, right. Putting yourself in the other person's shoes, the person who you're trying to get them to have a good experience, you're trying to get them to do a certain kind of action.
Yeah.
We have a question from Ashley Chapman, who is looking at your bookshelf. Love the books in your background. What are some of the books that have transformed your view of behavior change and awareness?
Well, BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits definitely has. I can't get my hand on it quickly. Brene Brown really has, because that gets at some of that emotional psychology aspects of people. There's a lot that you can't see that's right here on design thinking and creativity. So Tina Selig is a big one for me. Ian McClellan, no, it's saying the name wrong. Ian Kelly for his creative confidence. There's a lot of different pieces on here. Dan Rome has made a big influence on me. There's just a ton.
Yeah.
I read a lot, and I don't tend to read a lot of fiction. I tend to read a lot of nonfiction.
Yeah. You can tell from your bookshelf that you really do have a nice library that's constantly reminding and informing you of your approach there.
Yeah. And I keep up with some of my favorite professors from Stanford. I mean, Connect is Carol Robin and David Bradford, and they were both at the GSB, the Graduate School of Business. And somewhere I have, I can't find it, Humor Seriously with Jennifer Aker, and how to use humor to teach people. And she's a marketing professor, and so I'm not trying to market, but I really am on a regular basis, security within the company, to get people to want to engage with it and be curious about it.
Right. Well, we are coming up on the end of our half hour here, Lisa, and it's been awesome. I mean, I'm sure that I could just go on and on. We have a shy audience today, so audience, please get your questions in here or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, I'll turn over to you. If you have any, if there was like one kind of a story. Oh, here we go. We got something from... I'll go ahead and read this out loud to you here. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for your talk. This is from James Briscoe. I'm interested in the behavioral responses people have towards cyber training and have read instances of employees failing phishing sims who become disgruntled because of the subsequently required training. These negative emotions manifest in rebellious behavior, such as not opening emails at all when questioned. They claim that they were being cautious of phishing. After reading some pieces from James Linton on what he calls failure dynamics, he states that a user in a simulated environment is hardwired to channel all the blame for the failure situation right back at their employer, So it's not surprising when you also stir in a pay increase, things get a little spicy. How do you manage these sorts of situations? So it sounds like, how do you manage a really negative reaction to a fish?
That's one of the things, and I know Elliot said it's not a vendor marketing webinar, but that was one of the things that I was looking for when I was looking across all the different vendors, to make sure that it wasn't a penalization for clicking that reinforced the learning. It was a reinforcement of you did the right thing to then see the training. And people can skip it. You don't have to go through it. But if you don't engage with the fish, you don't even know. It's come and gone and you don't even know. You've just missed it. I mean, you can see it in your dashboard of your leaderboard that, oh, look, I missed 3. Goodness, how did I miss those? And if you click it, it will tell you, hey, this is what you missed, but you still get points. You still get the aspect of positive reinforcement saying, hey, you did click it, but do you want to see what you missed? So it's softer. It's not a punishment. It's not a retroactive, and it's really reinforcing the point of Hoxhunt's program is to increase reporting. And because of that increased reporting, you'll see a decrease in clicking. And so the reporting is 100% the focus and 100% of what we talk about. Yes, I walked in and there was very negative reaction and feelings about the InfoSec team, that it was a finger wagging, don't you dare, you can't do this kind of experience with our team. And we've turned that around, because it's become much more of a collaborative model of please ask us any question, please come to us with any issue. Let's see if we can work together to find a solution. And that we see that organizations, teams, people are coming earlier with challenges and questions, so that it's security retrofit from the beginning, rather than the old experience of, oh gosh, if we don't say anything, maybe they won't notice. Oh gosh, they noticed. Now we have to redo everything that we built because security says it's not secure. So you're never going to get rid of that entirely. I know there's people that they're not doing any of my drills. They completely ignore it. They just delete everything. They've never touched the Hoxhunt button. And I know I'm not going to sway them, but it's positive reinforcement. And that's what people are putting on Slack and in the internet and talking about, that, hey, did you get this shield? Hey, I just got this achievement. And that's what people are hearing about. And we don't stop people from telling one another about a latest fish, even if it's a drill. So they're telling each other in Slack, and everybody's hearing about it. I don't care. Yes, that'll affect the rates, but that's not what we're going for. We're going for that behavior of, yes, you should warn each other. Something in the wild came in, please tell each other so that we all know and we can deal with it. I hope that answers the question a little bit, James.
Yeah, that was great. Oh, thanks for answering and expanding. Love the bookshelf from James. Yeah, that's great. I hope you have a little time, Lisa. Dutch Schwartz is here, so now it's a real show when Dutch is here, and he has a question. But you just talked about leaderboards, and another anonymous attendee asked the question based on that from anonymous attendee. I love the Peloton leaderboard analogy. What kind of rewards does DocuSign offer to their top performers, if any?
I'm not sure whether you mean in general or just around the security program. We're working toward a more robust security recognition program, one that both recognizes you in one-offs for things that you did that you weren't trying to get recognition for, and ways in which, again, gamified, you can gather points, you can gather levels, you can hit achievements that are going to give you certain opportunities or access or credit to purchase things that you want. We're working towards some of that, but a lot of it comes from, quite frankly, it's like that old handwritten note. They're not handwritten because that's not, I mean, we save paper, so we're not going to use paper. And global workforce, but that personal note that says, you did this, it was the right thing. We recognize and appreciate that you did that. Please keep up the great work. That comes from our leader, that gets copied all the way up to that individual's leader at the e-staff level, so that everybody has visibility into, look what so-and-so did. It's a small thing, but it was the right thing. And we saw it, and we're going to recognize you for it. We have challenge coins. We have a trust exemplar recognition we do every month. And we're working on a more robust program that I can actively go achieve more points by going to this, by participating in that, by doing these things, as well as that continue to spot people for doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It's It's funny how powerful recognition can be. Just a simple act of recognition. I mean, what was it? How to Win Friends and Influence People had several chapters based on that whole idea.
Yeah.
Okay, the questions are pouring in now. Okay, so we have Dutch Schwartz is asking, "Hi, Lisa. This is an interesting. So, this is a philosophical question, perhaps. What did you think you knew, but later realized you had to rethink?" A nod to Adam Grant.
That's a heavy question that I'm not sure I can really adequately answer. Because I'm so hungry for what people are saying and writing about and what behavioral scientists are busy pushing out. I read a lot. I watch a lot of webinars. I get a lot of newsletters. I'm constantly engaged in a lot of those things. I am embarrassed to say that I was taught very strongly about the left brain, right brain thing, and relied on that for a long time. And I suppose that's one of the aspects that had to relearn and rethink. And while I always believed in the whole person, one of my master's degrees is in student development, which is about education of the whole person. I never really applied it to the whole brain. And I believed left, get at that side versus get at that side, get at the emotional and the creative, get at the rational and the mathematical. And I did have to relearn all that. And so I appreciate that I'm still ongoing digging into that. Lisa, no, can't grab it. Yep, here it is. This is a great book, Lisa Feldman Barrett, 7 Lessons from the Brain, about the brain, excuse me. So she's a great one to follow.
Cool.
Sometimes I
You
can't
have a
grab
book
things quickly.
Yeah, you have a book for every question, though. It's amazing. You're able to just go back there and grab that. I'm not familiar. I have to check that. I too was brainwashed by the left brain, right brain thing.
And the lizard brain. That doesn't exist either, despite us thinking that it does and hearing it for decades.
Oh, that's such a great name, though. Next, you're gonna tell me that Pluto, the planet's not a planet. This is just so there's so much going on here. A few more questions. We have and here's probably some other InfoSec leaders who want some tips here. How do you keep people's attention focused on your behavioral change program when you're competing with all the other internal comms training? Do you collaborate with any other internal initiatives? That's a great question.
I do, and I do it on a regular basis. And I would say it's taken 4 years to get trust and security to really be something that we can claim as part of our DNA and actually have that be true. But while I work a lot, of course, with my own team, the Trust and Security Organization, I work a ton with employee communications, with sales and marketing, with HR, and with the e-staff. I'm in their space. So they may not love me, but they all know me. And to make myself available and have a large ambassador program so that I'm constantly collaborating and working with others on a regular basis so that it comes up often.
Yeah, great answer. It's a great question too. Whoever anonymous attendee was that put that out there. It's one of the funny things that I've always thought was strange at how IT was burdened with this huge communications challenge to communicate a security program when that's typically not what IT and security was trained to do. When you have HR, you have marketing and communications department, for instance, to help out with that. So that's I think it's a great answer that the answer is to reach out. Moving on, we got at least 2. Do you have time for 5 more minutes? Yeah. Okay. All right. Appreciate that. These are good questions here. Also from anonymous attendee, from your experience at DocuSign, how long do you think it takes to see true behavioral change in terms of security on an enterprise-wide level? Yeah, it's a good concrete question.
That is a good question. I think you need to be able to measure it across various stages of maturity so that you can also get the wins right away, because you don't want to have to wait 3 or 4 years to actually see, oh, look, it finally happened. You need those wins for your own brain to stay motivated and stay engaged in it. So if you can really, and I'm not going to go into that here, if you can really define the metrics and how you're going to measure and what you're going to look for to see that it's having a positive impact, you should be able to start to see some of that shift very quickly. If you can truly make your security a part of the culture by just raising awareness, by having it come up more often, by making sure that you share the results, even if nobody's interested, of training, of phishing, of this drill, of this information, and make it something that comes up a lot. I think you'll start to see that some people will say, wait a minute, let's look at what that is. Oh, they wouldn't have noticed it before, but now it's something that comes up all the time. You do need to get that buy-in. And while our top leaders didn't necessarily talk about it a lot, there was no hesitation to see the security culture be ramped up. And how long did it take for them to really be more embracing of it? Probably a couple years, but they are. And it's really into that unconscious competence. They don't even think about it. They just assume that, of course, it's going to be part of all the programs, and it's going to be part of what they need to talk about as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. I could also add to that. We at Hoxhunt just did a thing called the Behavioral Cybersecurity Statistics Report, and looking at Hoxhunt numbers globally, 1.6 million users, 24.7 million simulations. We saw that typically after about 6 simulations, there's a dip. And then after, so depending on every organization is quite different, mind you that, but globally it was something like by around 20 simulations into the program, things really had changed for the better.
I just want to comment on that a little bit. Again, we've talked about, one of the factors for me was the frequency, that you guys are 3 times a month, every 10 days. You can do, you don't have to. And when I pull my monthly stats, part of what I'm pulling is how many total simulations went to just our active employees. And it's always over 10,000. And that's a shocking number. If I was managing my own program and I was going to send out 10,000 simulations to our employees, holy moly, that would overwhelm me in 1 month. And it's not, that's the funny part too, is sometimes teams will ask me, Lisa, are you looking at each email that goes out? And I said, no, because there's like 100 different active ones at any given time. We've worked on our rules of engagement, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's going to work, what's not going to work. But the variety means Kelly's asking, why did we make the decision to not stop employees from posting about phishing tests? Because that's a key aspect of secure behavior. You want them spreading the news to one another if there was something real happening. You want them talking to each other in whatever channels are appropriate for them, to be warning each other, whether it's some strange person in the building that nobody knows who that person is, but they're pretending to be somebody and they're not. You want them spreading that news and information so that we're all making sure we're watching out for each other. And it goes back to that. If I delete the email, I've only protected me. But if I report it and I tell my colleagues about it, I've spread the wealth of protection to a wider bubble. And so you want to see that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That really well put. Thank you for emphasizing that. It's a really, really important point here. So we're about at the end of our time. I think I said
Kelly. I'm sorry. It was Kelsey. My apologies, Kelsey.
Kelsey Pritchard. Right. Thanks for going back and answering that. And Brad Roberts had a question that he has retracted. However, in the spirit of this being kind of a community building experience here in the Ciso Sandbox, Brad does say, let's get coffee next time Elliot is in Seattle. Brad is a longtime tech leader in Seattle who I am very familiar with, as he once hired me for another job. Okay, well, hey, Lisa, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
Come anytime. It's really been great. I'm sure everybody got a lot out of this.
This was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate being a part of your series.
Great. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time. And for all those who are viewing, I do suggest that if you haven't already, go check out the Hoxhunt Behavioral Cybersecurity Statistics Report. It's going to have some really nice stats to go along with a lot of what we talked about today. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.